Welcome to the first episode of Hook 'em and Book 'em with ATX Self-Tape. We have with us Michael Gmur, a seasoned actor, veteran, local Austin actor, also with some experience in LA. We're going to get to know him a little bit about his experience, and he's going to tell us about his journey and his audition process, how it's evolved, and what helps him stay motivated and keep going through this ever-changing industry we call filmmaking. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and so do all of our viewers. So, tell us about yourself, your journey, and from when you first started auditioning until now. Take us through it.
Yeah. Hi, Brett. Thanks for having me on here. Super appreciate being on your inaugural episode. Um, yeah, so I guess my very first acting would have been when I was a little kid. I was like boy number two in Music Man, and then I played Hansel and Hansel and Gretel. There's a lot of nepotism going on though, because my mom directed it for the school, and she definitely cast me as the lead. She said I was perfect.
Way to go, mom.
Yeah,
Nailed it.
thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate that. And then, so I did those two things. I grew up in a pretty theatrical household in terms of my mom was an opera singer, so there was always everything was a song. My address was a song. My phone number was a song. Like there was songs about cleaning up. But I only did those two plays, and then I stopped in fourth grade because I did a talent competition and I heard some kids making fun of me. And so I didn't do anything again until I got out of the Marine Corps and I was studying physical therapy and decided to switch to, I had just come out, right? I was closeted and I just came out and I was like, I want to sing and I want to sing, and I want to act. And my parents were like, you definitely should. I haven't really done much of the singing, but went full bore in acting, switched my major to theater from physical therapy and just never looked back. And I went super hard in the paint. And that was 13 years ago. So yeah, I've been pursuing acting for 13 years, professionally, post school for about 11.
Okay.
So yeah.
Congratulations on your first booking. Seems like the casting director knew what she was looking for. Uh,
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Still my
but
biggest fan.
hey, we all need, but that's a great point. We all need a biggest fan, whoever it is,
Yeah.
in this world. Somebody that you can say, "Hey, I booked it," or "Hey, read with me if you need a reader." But
Shares that
that
for times too.
and your background's theater.
Yeah, so yeah, I got my degree in theater from Cal State University Northridge, about an hour from where I grew up. I grew up north of LA, which is very different than LA. And then I spent from 2013 to 2019. I was in LA. Took a little break to walk across the US. Was raising money for homeless veterans from Maine, walked from Maine to San Diego. Yeah, quite the little journey. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I thought that I thought that maybe, the industry had died, and I was like, maybe this isn't what I'm like supposed to be doing anymore. And so I got my master's in education thinking I would be a teacher. And after like a week and a half in the classroom, I was like, nope. At least small children. I love children. I have so many nieces and nephews, but teaching them is a whole different story. I could
Mhm.
do like college or high school. I think I could teach like theater, but
Yeah.
or some sort of acting class, but I don't think that yeah, little kids are
Yeah.
I love them, but teaching them is not for me. And at that point I pretty much moved to Austin like in 2020, New Mexico for a little bit, and then back in 21, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out to all the teachers that do that. That's tough. I'm with you. I coached 9 to 12-year-old boys basketball, but that was not teaching. That was, well, I guess it was teaching basketball, but it
Yeah.
was more like babysitting. Like I wasn't, they drop them off and be like, "All right, bye." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, you're just leaving me here with your kids."
It
But
could be intense, man.
yeah. So, but have you worked with any young children? How have you found your experiences working with children, obviously, versus teaching them?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been an uncle since I was 13. So I've been an uncle forever and I love kids. And so I've worked with, I think I can't remember the first time I worked with a child actor, but I've worked with a lot of children from infants to um, like 13, 14-year olds. Actually, I had someone who was an 18-year-old. He was playing my son and he was supposed to be 18 in the film not too long ago. So yeah,
Mm,
I've done the whole spectrum and it's great. You know, I find especially when you're working with smaller children, it's all about keeping them engaged, making sure they're having fun, you know, and just keeping it super loose and then being able to adjust and to whatever they're doing and working off of them instead of trying to have them follow you. Because, you know, I've met some super professional uh, child actors, especially in casting, who I'm just like, oh my gosh, one day I want to be like you when I grow up because that was amazing. But you know, for the most part, they're little kids and they're trying to have fun, and so I found that you have to be willing to adjust to what they're doing, meet them on their level.
yeah. There's a lot of them that have just really great natural instincts.
Yeah,
And, you go into a scene like, okay, I'm going to do this. But like you said, it's better to say, you know what? If the, just like anything, whether it's a 50-year-old
yeah,
co-star or a 15-year-old co-star, you got to work with what they're giving you. And,
yeah.
working with children, you obviously, the burden's more on you to be more mindful of what they're doing as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, there's a bit more of like emotional like you know, obviously we're always listening in the scene and reacting to what's happening, but and then when the camera stops, there's that whole like keeping them engaged and making sure that they're having fun and you know that they feel, I don't know, comfortable.
Hey, that's my problem. They got to keep me engaged too. So
Yeah.
I'm just a big child. They say cut and I'm like, ooh, butterfly. Like
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
um so you said your first audition was for uh the mom, but
I don't think I auditioned, honestly.
okay. The first memorable one.
Yeah.
But how has since this is more about hooking the audience to book
Yeah.
something, how do you think your audition process has changed from the very beginning till now, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed. My very first audition as like me being like I'm pursuing acting was for Larry Biederman at CSUN, and it was for The Seagulls by Chekhov. And I went in there with my monologue, and you know, I was walked on stage, you know, it's just him in the audience, and he said, "Okay, you know, whenever you're ready, you know, ask me a couple questions. What's your name? Blah blah blah." He's like, "Okay, do your thing." And so I'm facing the audience, and this was my first time. I had no idea how to audition. I was just like hitting it hard, and knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna go do it anyway. So he said, "Go for it." And as soon as he said that, I just did a 90-degree turn and faced the wall and delivered my monologue because I was like, I just knew that I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to just look at him. But I didn't understand, you know, like it'd been so long since I did anything on, you know, since I was a little kid. I was like, I have no idea. So I literally just like, maybe it wasn't quite 90, but it was a lot stronger than 45, you know?
It wasn't profile, but it wasn't straight on either.
Yeah, it was a choice.
It's a
Um,
choice.
a choice. And so from that to
Did you book that
now,
one?
I didn't, but years later he when or two a year 2 years later, 2 years later, he was doing Tea Party, and I auditioned for the lead in that. And in the rehearsal process, he was like, "How come you didn't audition for The Seagull? Why didn't I cast you in that?" And I was like, "No, I don't know. You know, I did not refresh his memory."
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe I
Yeah, I
was
was
out
like,
of
"Yeah,
town or something.
crazy. Yeah, maybe next time." So from that to now everything's on self-tape, right? When I started it, you know, and when you started, it was like I would drive all across LA and have like, you know, 4 or 5 auditions in a day. And I'm just changing, like literally stripping down to my underwear on the sidewalk to change into my next outfit for my next audition. Um, and now really kind of understanding all the dynamics of it, where exactly I'm supposed to look, not looking too far, not, just really understanding the technical side of things makes a huge difference in auditions. I've had people who have cast me and stuff, especially like indie stuff that's not with a bigger casting director. Sorry, I feel like I have something in my eye. I don't know what that is. Anyways,
Got eye
uh,
oil there.
I got such long, I got long eyebrows. I got like this old man eyebrow, and my eyelashes are long. Sorry.
Something to look
Uh,
forward to later in life.
yeah. But you know, I've had people watch and be like, "Oh, look, like your eye line, like you're moving it, you want all over when you're talking to different people, and I can just always see your face." Because I think we have this tendency, especially newer actors, when it's like, "Oh, the person to your left is saying something." Or recently, I had an audition and a callback where they were like, "The person behind you says something," and instead of looking back, I just looked a little bit further left and put the person there, and it doesn't feel weird. No one's like, I don't know why I didn't turn around, and why I'm seeing his face right now. So
Yep.
that's, I guess, one way is the technical side, and then just feeling a lot more confident in my choices. And um, instead of, I feel like early on, I was always concerned with like, well, what do they want? What do they want? What do they want? And now I'm like, well, what feels right to me? Like, what feels right to me that's within the realm of the world that this writer has created, you know? Um,
100%.
yeah.
That's a huge difference, though, between now and then going in
Mhm.
person versus self-tapes, because personally, I like being in the room. I
Yeah.
prefer it where because I was taught to book the room. And, you go in, like you said, at least he didn't remember like, hey, yeah, I remember that bad audition, like
Yeah.
that was interesting or something, but he didn't remember. And so, but if you were in person, maybe he would have, who knows? And there's a big difference. How have you found the adjustment? Because auditioning is a whole different thing than acting. And
Yeah.
how have you found the adjustment? What do you prefer? You prefer in person?
Well, to be fair to Larry, they were both in person. He just had bad memory over those 2 years.
That's
So no, his memory
funny.
was fine. He just so many
Hey,
auditions
lucky
because
you. There you go.
yeah. But as far as self-tape versus in person, I mean, I love the room as well. But I prefer self-tapes
Mm,
because I do not miss driving all over town. And also the fact that, I was just in Oregon filming. I just had that, callback for something you and I both auditioned for in North Carolina. I'm going to DC this week for another project, and all three of those without self-tapes, I wouldn't have had a bite at that apple, and I would be strictly dependent on what's happening in Texas. And even though the industry is picking up out here, it's not enough. Even it being in LA right now, it's not enough to just be auditioning for projects in LA. I feel like if we want to be working actors, we have to be willing to audition for stuff everywhere. And the only way that's possible is through self-tapes. Now, as far as like in a perfect world, if I could just teleport and didn't have to spend hours in traffic and whatever else, um, then yeah, I see for auditions there's some plus sides to in person, but I actually prefer an in-person callback because then I know I've been narrowed down. I've had the opportunity to sit with the material, so I'm not walking into an audition for the first time wondering what's going on, wondering if this is what they're looking for. I've had a lot of time with the character and with the sides, for the most part, unless they change them right. And so when I go in for that callback, then that's when I use all those skills from years of auditioning in person. You know what I mean? And every callback I've had in person, even if I don't book it, I know that I've won them over. I know for a fact that I booked that room hard, and for the most part, the things I've had callbacks for in person, um, I've booked, like when I had the audition self-tape and also like I've gotten really good at self-tapes and the technical side of it. And so I know how to make it look good. I know how to make me look good. I know how to just like make it, I know how to make it work, right? And
got
then
a
I also
rhythm.
yeah, and I know how to transfer all that into the room when needed because they are different.
Yep. I would modify mine to basically word for word. mimic what you said. Like, I really do like the fact that self-tapes give you access to other locations of acting.
Hmm.
You could for someplace in Europe, that
Yeah.
you would never be able to unless they had a remote casting location in LA or something. And I
Yeah.
definitely do not miss the same thing where like, hey, I've got an audition at 2 in Burbank, and then I got to get back down to central casting or wherever 45 minutes away at 2:30.
Yeah.
So it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And for those listening that don't know what book the room means, what would you describe that as?
Yeah, booking the room means that generally that casting director, but sometimes it's that director or that writer, but generally the casting director, meaning you went in and maybe you weren't right for the part, but they remember you and they're gonna call you in again because they you showed up, you did a good job, you were professional, you did all the things right, right? It was just they're looking for blue, but you're navy blue, and what they really wanted was sky blue, but you're the blue, you are blue, and everything was right except for one little thing, it was just like, this person is just more in alignment with what we wanted.
Yep.
So you know that you're going to get called back into that room, and that's what booking the room is. Anytime you're called back by a casting director, I assume that that means I've booked the room, you
Right.
know?
A callback usually would mean that, hey, we really
Yeah,
liked your audition. We could see you in the part, but there's obviously other moving dynamics involved in
yeah,
filmmaking. Okay, who's the person in the scene with you? You know, um, that's what that would mean to me as well.
yeah,
Book the room, like it's kind of like dating in a way, right? Like just leave a good impression, right?
yeah.
Like you can't determine whether they pick you or like you or use you, but what you can determine is the quality, how prepared you are, and just what kind of confidence you bring to the room.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime a casting director calls you in for another role on another project or a callback, yeah, that's booking the room, in my opinion.
yeah. And there is a lot in Austin, there is a lot of casting
Mhm.
directors that are, I don't know, did they do a lot of in person here? I don't even know if they've done much, or I haven't
Um,
done much in person here.
so I mean, for any SAG project, then yeah, you can always request a Zoom, and sometimes they'll do an in-person. Um, but those slots are limited. But as far as I know, I've had in-person with for a callback, I've had in person with Ashley Garagna. I've and Michael Druck kind of, but that was a Meals for Monologues thing, so that wasn't actually for a project. And then there are other independent projects that I've done in person for callbacks again and some auditions. But yeah, for the most part, it's self-tape, especially for commercials. LA, I know, has moved back to in-person commercials for the most part. There's still some self-tape auditions, but for the most part, they're doing in person. Um,
How long have you been in the union?
I've been in the union for just under a year now. I've been
Okay.
eligible since 2018.
Do you remember, because obviously I probably did a couple things that were union. Do you remember the one role or audition that it was that got you eligible?
Yeah, it was for American Airlines. I was over, where was I casting out of? That was out of not Dan Black. Is it Dan Black? Oh my gosh, I cannot remember the casting office. It's over in Burbank in the brick buildings. I can remember the room. Why can't I can't remember the
It
casting director's name, but
was
yeah,
LA though.
it was LA. Yeah, that was American Airlines in-person audition, in-person callback. The callback, I'm struggling in the water and like breathing heavy, like I just ran out of there because I was doing recruit training, and there's like the person who's running the room, on camera is watching me, one other person, and then like three other people are on their computers, it wasn't not. I get it, because they're trying to get this thing made, but it's just, that funny thing of like everybody's on their computers and you're over there just like delivering, this thing.
But that's a great point though, because a lot of newer actors, even myself, and I'm sure yourself, if you go into a room, things are distracting. it's
Mhm.
but you've done theater, so like, okay, if there's sounds or a light goes off, you gotta block it out. And there's a lot of times where you walk in and like you just said, somebody's on their laptop replying
Yeah.
to emails, and really there's the only person really watching you is the cameraman.
Yeah.
And even because the casting director is looking at the sides and the script and all that kind of stuff. So, is there any tips and tricks that you use to stay focused, to memorize lines, to prepare for your auditions that would help you block out those distractions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is, I memorize by rote, just going over it over and over and over and over again, and I try to keep it as neutral as possible. I'm not very successful at that, but I try when I'm memorizing. Um, and then, because I think the more comfortable we are with the lines, the easier it is to just stay focused on your reader and let everybody else do what everybody else is doing. Because the moment, if we don't know our lines, then we're thinking about that. And then you see someone clacking over here, eating a sandwich, drinking coffee, or sometimes, what, giving you some really positive feedback, because I've been given notes, you know what I mean? The director gives you a note and you see them in the corner of your eye and they're just like shaking their head like yep, and and internally you're like, I know I'm nailing this,
Yeah.
but you're just like, but that doesn't mean that I can drop anything that's happening here. And which I would say is the same thing on set, even though it's, quiet, all this, like I've done some really emotionally heavy scenes and there's someone over off camera trying to look at you and they're just like bobbing and weaving and you're just like, can you please stop moving? You know what
Can
I
this
mean? Like,
person stop moving?
yeah, like I've literally just found out I'm not going to die anymore. Like, can you please just like give me some stillness, But that's
Yeah,
that's showbiz, baby.
that's showbiz. You got to deal with it. You can't. Yeah, that the Anthony Hopkins method of just repetition of
Yeah, I don't know. I've wanted to do the 100 times, reading the script 100 times, and like I try to read it a bunch, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, 100 is, but maybe that's why he's him and I'm,
right. That's what I say too. I'm like,
maybe that's
I
why
can
I don't
maybe
have an
do it.
Academy Award.
Yeah, and he's Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, I'm the same way when I first started auditioning. I looked at like everything online, like memorization tips and tricks and all this stuff. And literally, no matter what you did, it all came back to you just have to be prepared. Like you just have
Yeah,
to memorize your lines. And
yeah,
that's repetition. And
yeah.
as I have found that now I can get off book a lot quicker
Oh, absolutely.
than when
Yeah.
I did at the beginning. And you almost look back and you're like, man, why did I take so long to get off book?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
a lot of reasons, you're distracted, you have personal issues going on, or you're just not, you're trying to focus on different things.
It's a muscle, I can remember, those early theater auditions at CSUN trying to memorize like 3 pages of dialogue and it taking like 2 weeks, and I could, if I need to, I could get, I've had moments in auditions or callbacks where like, hey, we want you to read for this role, and I get handed 4 pages of dialogue and I memorize it in like 15 minutes and I go in and do it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's, that doesn't happen every time. Some dialogue takes a little bit longer, but I couldn't have done that
Now,
13
right.
years ago. If you would have handed me 4 pages of dialogue and been like, come in, I would have just been like staring at it and then occasionally looking up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point. I was going to ask you, because people ask me a lot, and I still ask a lot too, like, okay, quick turnaround, multiple pages of dialogue. Do you attempt it off book or do you hold the sides?
I I think in the last like 5 years or so, I've held my sides and referenced them for one, maybe
Mm,
two auditions. So I always just push through and just figure it out.
yeah. That's,
Um,
I would agree. I've tried there's maybe one, like you said, one or two where
yeah,
it's multiple pages. I just didn't have time.
it just makes such a difference. I've watched, I worked in casting a lot, and I've seen bigger names come in with their sides in their hand and do it, you know what I mean? And do fine and book it. But they've got a few things. One, their name. And two, some people, some people are, that's also a skill that some people are really good at. There's some actors who do not memorize their lines and have cue cards all over the place, and you would never know and I've worked with them. Name people, famous people that you would know their name, and um, you would never know, because they've just got it down, you know.
Most
Marlon
notably on
Brando
the,
did that.
I was
I'm
just
sorry.
about to say, Marlon
Yeah.
Brando is the most notable name that had the lines on his coffee cup,
Yeah.
in multiple movies. In almost every movie he did near, you know, The Godfather on, um, there's famous pictures of behind the scenes sets with Robert Duvall with the whole script on
Yeah.
his chest written out because he didn't want to memorize lines. And then Johnny Depp said he also wanted to, he had to have the lines written out for him right here, for Don Juan DeMarco when he was in there. And
Yeah.
because Brando just showed up and didn't know the lines. But that's Brando. That's,
Yeah. So I mean, is that right or wrong? I don't think for most people, I don't think it works, and I also think that the pressure of a tight deadline for whatever reason helps me memorize a lot faster, you know.
yeah. It's also, if you book the role, it's your job to memorize them, right? Like if Brando is a whole different ball game.
I think that's the advice that I would give to an actor is like, hey, this is your job, but hey, if you can do it another way, then great. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because who am I to say what the right or wrong way is? I'm not the arbiter of anything. But I would say it's probably better to memorize your lines and if you want to work, I would say for the most part you need to. And I would say that 99.8% of actors do memorize their lines.
Yeah. I like the one perk about cold reads I like is that it's just a level playing field. You
Hmm.
show up, everyone just got the sides, you're all cold reading, which I like. I think I am decent at cold reads.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the insecurity of, oh, I didn't have to prepare anything. This is just everyone's equal, as opposed to like they get to watch my self-tape and they're like, well, he made this choice, so I don't like that choice.
Yeah, my teacher, when I was studying clowning, um, uh, my teacher would always tell me to, she didn't say stop being so smart, but it was something like that, quit trying to think of everything you're going to do,
Like
just
intellectual
being it.
about it.
Yeah. And so I think when we get those cold reads, we don't have that moment to think about what our choices are going to be. It's all instinct, which I think is where the best acting comes from. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
a lot of my style is those instincts after you've memorized the lines,
Mhm.
obviously. But anyways, yeah.
Do you prefer comedy or drama?
It just depends. I prefer good writing,
There you go.
to be honest, I
That's
prefer good writing. So
I would say
if
that's
it's
the
not
correct
music,
answer.
yeah, and you don't always get it. Sometimes you're trying to polish a turd,
Yep. What
you
are
know.
some either good books, articles, newsletters, or videos, documentaries on acting or film that you've watched that you would maybe recommend to people to check out?
Yeah, I just read Bill Esper's book. I can't remember the name of it, but he studied with Meisner and taught his technique. He studied with him and then taught under him for a long time. And they've got the Esper Studios in New York. I just read his book. Great book. I wish I would have read that, 10 years ago, but I really enjoyed that.
What's it called?
Um,
Do you know? Do you remember off the
it's
top?
Bill Esper. I can't remember the name of the book.
Okay, I'll try to put
Um,
the link in the comments for everybody.
yeah, really, really, really great book. And then there's another book called Directing Actors, and I think that's a great book as well because it gives a little perspective on the director side of things, which I think is always. I think as an actor, we have to understand lighting, we have to understand camera, we have to understand all editing. You know what I mean? The more we understand about the other aspects, the better it will make our performances and our technique, and the easier it'll make everyone else's job, which is huge
Yeah.
for.
We
Yeah.
how has your experience being the casting director on the other side of the camera helped your auditions and kind of what you're looking
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. So I've only been the casting director on a few projects, but I worked in casting as a reader for a number of years in big offices for a lot of big TV shows and movies and whatnot. Um, and I would say it's really helped me to understand that um, one, there's choices in the script that like everybody is going to make, right? That like you can see 10 people and it's like you've seen not the same audition, but close to the same audition 10 times. I've learned that there are certain beats that need to be hit. You know what I mean? Like you can't, there's some things like you cannot glance over, you
Hmm.
know? I've learned that all the action that's in the script, you know what I mean, is not necessary, right? If it says you're kissing someone, then maybe it's a really sweet smile, you know what I mean? And you have a really sweet moment with them. Um, if you're doing action or pulling a gun, especially with self-tapes, have that all be off camera so we can see like, I'm holding a gun, but you don't see the gun necessarily. That was kind of a bad one because you could see my hands, but like
No,
right
but
here, right?
that's good
They'll
because your hands are off screen.
but yeah, but they'll understand. Okay, they'll understand their script that, oh yeah, that was him pulling the gun. Um, uh, it's a lot better to do all that than mime stuff, right? So if you're gonna smoke, I've just actually had some auditions where it's like the people are supposed to be smoking, and so many are faking it, and it's honestly just it's just distracting. So if you're gonna have a cigarette, one, and even if it's an herbal cigarette, one, make sure it's like actually looks real, and two, if you're gonna freaking puff on it, make sure it's lit, because otherwise it's just weird. It just
Yeah.
is weird, and I'm like, I'd just rather you not smoke. um, it's not helping your performance. Now, if you have a cigarette, right, and you never light it or anything like that, or it's behind your ear, that's something else. But if you're hitting it, have it be real. So there's that. Um, and the other big part is it's helped me understand that there are things that are just out of our control, like we've talked about. Like I've sat in the room with, big directors, right, doing big projects. Um, as you know, as I'm reading for them, and I got to be privy to these conversations, and they don't call people back or cast people for for all these bizarre reasons you hear, right? Like, oh, they remind me of this person, they remind me of that. The one I can remember mostly is this actor came in, it was for a TV show for a series regular, and we were in callbacks, getting, deciding who we're going to send to test for the network. And the actor in between lines, he had his lips open, so we would be like, "Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Brett?" And then while waiting to respond, he wouldn't close his mouth, and it wasn't like, but his lips wouldn't be closed necessarily, but it wasn't, it was whatever. Like so many people do that,
Hmm.
but he was like, can't stand that shit. Um,
Mm.
which is fine. Like it's his project and that's what he's looking for.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. But it really does come down to these minute things, and not to make everyone self-conscious and like make sure your lips are closed all the time, but there's just these things that, and he was great. The actor was great. They were so good. There's no reason they should like, but outside of that, their performance was amazing.
Right.
So
No,
yeah.
you make a great point though, and we got like 2 minutes left, and
Yeah.
but the main takeaway I want from people from this is to not stress about the things they can't control. The only thing you can control is how prepared you are. And
Yeah.
maybe you can't even you can't control that time frame wise, but you can do the best of what you can.
Yeah.
And with the last minute and a half left, give everybody kind of a what you use to keep kind of motivated in this weird changing industry, and then I guess sign off, tell everybody where they can watch your stuff and follow you on, social medias and help support your career.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So my social media is Michael Gmur, MichaelGmur for everything. I post occasionally. As far as like keeping motivated, you know, it's just it's what I love, so that makes it easier. And I just know that every major actor I've ever heard talk about and and quote unquote making it, they all say it's persistence. and I've had to persist through a lot of things in my life. So I just keep persisting. And I've been also very fortunate in a lot of ways. I was in the Marine Corps, so I had my school paid for, right? Um, and I've had different people help and support me and cheer me on. So it's not just like me being, I'm just the most resilient person or whatever. Like I've had a lot of support. So that's huge. But the other part is like that, that has to be what you love because it's not even that you get, I feel like it's not even that we get so many no's. It's just that we don't even hear anything back at all. So yeah.
Yeah. And so with your auditioning now, how do you audition? You're in Austin and everything's, mostly self-tape. Who do you use? How do you audition here in Austin?
Yeah, mostly via Zoom or something like that. I've taped with you with ATX Self-Tape a couple times, which is really nice. You're a great reader, so
We'll we'll get you booked.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah. But that's always. I mean, that really is really nice. Knowing that you're there. Um, yeah, I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to tape with you. So yeah, that's probably the main thing I do now. I don't really have anybody come to my house in person. Everything's pretty much, yeah, Zoom or
yeah.
Face.
Well, on that note, if anybody's watching in the Austin area or not in the Austin area, check out atxselftape.com. You can book a Zoom session if you're in LA and you want a more affordable option than the ones local, which we all know are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
They can add up, which is another expense that we don't need as actors. So check out ATX Self-Tape. You get $5 off your first session. It's $25 for half hour, $50 for an hour. You can come to the studio, which is behind me, or you can do via Zoom. And got a bunch of news, events, resources on there. Check it out. I think everybody will like it. And before we sign off, tell everybody where they can watch some of your films and your commercials if they're still out there, Amazon, Tubi, YouTube, anywhere they can find you.
Yeah. So yeah, you can find me on social media at Michael Gmur, Michaelgmur, where I occasionally post things. And then I've got some projects on Amazon, a couple short films that I was in years ago that are on there. Um, I've got another project on most streaming platforms, Straight On Till Morning, where I played a creepy bad guy, which was a lot of fun.
Mm.
Uh, and it's a horror thriller, so if that's your vibe. And then I was in Ethan Cohen's Honey Don't. Had a couple roles in that with Margaret Qualley, and that's on Netflix now. Um, or you can, I'm sure, rent a video on demand on whatever. And I've got some other projects on the festival circuit, some other stuff that's in distribution talk. So I'll have several other films coming out soon. So yeah,
Awesome. So if you want to support, go to any one of those and just click play, put it on mute, and
yeah,
let it roll, get those residuals going up.
yeah, exactly.
Just help us out any way you can.
Yeah,
Well, I want to say a huge thank you to having your time used to help us promote ATX Self-Tape and Hook 'em and Book 'em podcast, which, here in Austin and even anywhere around the world as an actor, you have to hook them before you book them.
that's right.
So that's the whole key. And thank you very much for taking your time. And um, until next time, best of luck and keep breaking legs.
Yeah, man, we'll do. You do the same. I'm sure I'll see you around soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Bye.
See y'all.